Okay, let's set a scene. You're a first responder, you're on a critical call, and a patient's life is literally in your hands. You've got seconds to make the right decision. We're about to dive into one of those exact moments and talk about how to instantly recognize and handle a pyrogenic IV reaction.
So picture this. You're in the back of the ambulance. You have a patient with some abdominal pain. You've started an IV, and things seem to be settling down. But then, just a few minutes later, she looks over at you, her face is pale, and she says this. Suddenly, the whole situation has changed. The IV is running, but something is obviously going very, very wrong. Your mind is probably racing through all the possibilities. So, what do you do? What is your immediate life-saving next move? And this isn't some textbook question. Out in the field, the decision you make right now could change everything for this patient. If your gut, your clinical intuition, is absolutely screaming that this is more than just a minor side effect, you need to trust it. Because that combination of symptoms, those sudden chills, the back pain, and the nausea, that's a classic signpost. It's pointing directly to a specific and pretty dangerous complication, a pyrogenic reaction. So what in the world is a pyrogenic reaction? Well, basically, it's the body's big inflammatory response to these things called pyrogens, which are just fever-causing agents that have gotten into the bloodstream. And here's the key thing to get in your head. This is not an allergic reaction. It's not about giving too much fluid. This is a contamination issue, almost always from tainted IV fluid or equipment. And here are the hallmark features. Look familiar? They line up perfectly with what our patient is saying. The sudden, shaking chills, we call those rigors. That really specific back pain, the nausea. When you see this pattern pop up just a few minutes after an infusion starts, that's your big clue. Recognizing this pattern instantly is what separates a routine call from a crisis.
Okay, so you've recognized the pattern, you know what's happening. What's next is not up for debate. There is only one correct first action, and you have to do it immediately.
Here's the protocol. It's simple and it's absolutely non-negotiable. First thing, discontinue the fluid. Clamp that line right now. Step 2, disconnect the tubing completely. Get it away from the patient. And step 3, attach a saline lock. That just keeps the IV access open in case you need it for other meds later. Your number one, absolute top priority is to stop putting more of that contaminated fluid into their body. Every single drop counts here. You know, in a high-stress moment, it's so easy to just follow your first instinct. But in this exact scenario, those common instincts can be wrong, and they can be dangerous. That's why it's just as important to know what not to do. Let's break down these common mistakes, right? So giving a fluid bolus kind of seems plausible. The patient feels sick, so give them fluids. But in this case, you're just pushing in more of the contaminated stuff, making the whole thing worse. What about ondansetron for the nausea? Well, sure, it treats a symptom, but it completely ignores the root cause. It's not your primary life-saving move. And epinephrine? You might think, hey, maybe it's an allergic reaction. But we already know this is a contamination issue, which makes epi the totally wrong tool for the job. All right, we've covered the what, the why, and the what not to do. So now let's boil this all down into the one single crucial pattern that you need to have locked and loaded for when you're under pressure. This, right here. Burn this into your brain. A new IV followed by chills, back pain, and nausea should trigger one single thought, pyrogenic reaction. And that thought should trigger one single action, stop the infusion, immediately. That's it. That's your life-saving algorithm. So we've focused a lot on how to react, but you know the best strategy is always prevention? And since we know the cause here is contamination, I'm going to leave you with this question to take to your next shift. What piece of your IV equipment will you look at differently now? What will you double check every single time before it ever gets near a patient? Because that little bit of diligence, that's where true patient safety really begins.